you open up the meeting, please?
Howell Township Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting Monday, August 26, 2024. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on December 11, 2023, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star-Ledger. Second, on December 11, 2023, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on December 11, 2023, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in rendering their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. May I have roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Barillo?
Here.
Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. Orozco has been excused. Mr. Stanton, I have not heard from. Mr. Ryan?
Present.
Ms. Scottson?
Here.
And Chairman Sayed.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Will everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Andy, can we have a swearing in of the professionals?
Do you swear in the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your names for the record.
Charles Cunliffe.
Jennifer Beam.
Your professionals are sworn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Eileen, item 5, any approval of minutes?
I have no minutes this evening.
Thank you. Item 6, any vouchers?
I have no vouchers this evening.
Item 7, correspondence.
Yes, I have correspondence. I received a letter from Bonanno, who is an opposing counsel for Third Avenue Associates, and he has a professional who was not available for this evening, so he asked that this application be carried. I received an email from John Jackson, who is the attorney for Third Avenue Associates this afternoon, who said he consents to the adjournment requested by Mr. Bonanno and requests that an announcement be made tonight at the hearing that the application be carried to the September 23rd public hearing date with no new notice required.
Okay, so anyone that's here for case number BA 24-03, Third Avenue Associates, this application is being carried to September 23rd with no further notice required. Eileen, what's the expiration on this one?
Right now, it's 9/23/24, since that's the date they asked, but I did ask him for a further extension, so I will follow through with that tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also have an email from Mr. Pape, who is here tonight, regarding the last application on the agenda, which is case number BA 2211, Aaron Pecker and Yehuda Braun. And unfortunately, the Asbury Park Press did not get the notice in the paper on time for this evening, so that application cannot be heard and needs a new date with notice. And Mr. Pape is here.
Mr. Pape.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Kenneth Pape on behalf of Messrs. Pecker and Braun. I provided the evidence to Eileen. They did publish it on the 17th. We had given them directions to publish it on the 15th. We gave it to them in adequate time, and it's just one of those errors. We apologize to the board and to all who are affected by it, and we're just looking for a replacement date. Apologies to all involved.
Thank you, sir. Eileen, what kind of date do we have?
I I talked to Mr. Pape because his planner is also not available on September 9th. September 23rd has 2 applications, October 7th has 1, October 28th has nothing. So it's up to whenever his professionals are available and the dates.
So Christine Caffone's associate is here this evening, and she just told me that Christine is available on October 7th, so I would ask for October 7th. We're noticing and publishing for that date. I mean, this failed notice is of no value.
Okay, and this will be a new notice with an expiration date of,
Yeah, we need an extension of time as well, Mr. Pape.
Mr. Chair, on the record, on behalf of the applicant, will grant an extension till December 30th, 2024, and I'll follow it with a letter tomorrow.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyone that's here for case number BA 22-11, Aaron Becker and Yehuda Braun, this application is being carried to October 7th with new notice to follow and expiration date December 2024.
And then the only other thing is there are still people that haven't watched the stormwater video training, so if you haven't, please do so and send me an email when that is completed. And that is it.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we have one application before the board tonight, and that is application.
Mr. Chair, if I could just interject,
Yes?
if I could just say that the Third Avenue Associates is the cemetery application. That's definitely not going to be heard tonight. It was carried to September 23rd, so if you guys are here for the cemetery application, it's not going to be heard tonight.
Thank you. And just one, I did send out a resolution today. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read it,
I haven't.
so I'll just put it on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, case number BA 20-118, Fort Plains Partners LLC. This is a use and bulk variance to construct one flex warehouse and one self-storage building. Application of Fort Plains Partners LLC as applicants in Fort Plains Partners LLC, lot 6.01, and 1499 Holding Company LLC, lots 15.03 and 15.04, seeking use variance and bulk variance approval to construct a one-story flex warehouse with mezzanine office space and a four-story self-storage building and stormwater management system on premises known as blocks 137, lot 6.01, 15.03, and 15.04, Fort Plains Road. This is a bifurcated application as the applicant is only seeking use variance approval at this time. Expiration, October 12th, 2024. Mr. Pape.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board's professional staff and public. My name is Kenneth Pape. I'm an attorney with Howell Pape, and I have the opportunity and privilege to represent Fort Plains Partners, your applicant this evening. As read into the record, this is a request for use variance relief to permit the development of a property that has direct frontage on Fort Plains Road. It's approximately 34 acres.
And they can't hear you.
Oh,
Talk louder.
thank you. I thought I was talking loud. It's a property that is approximately 34 acres, a little more than 34 acres. It has frontage on Fort Plains Road and access to Highway 9. The request that we make this evening is for use variance relief, although you'll hear that there's considerable site plan work that's been done to satisfy comments and concerns from your staff. Before I make an opening statement to the board as to the applicant's request for relief, may I ask that the board confirm receipt of our notices and confirm that the board has jurisdiction?
Andy?
The board has jurisdiction, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Pape.
Thank you. We have it.
Thank you. A couple of things that we'd like to point out. There's going to be a total of 4 professional witnesses. 3 of the witnesses are here this evening. Christine Caffone is our planner, and as the board may be aware, Christine Caffone is taking her daughter to college and canceled her appointments for this evening. So we'll be coming back before you to conclude the application. The witnesses that we do present, are prepared to present this evening, are 3. Louis Zugner, who is the design engineer, is alongside of me. He'll begin. That'll be followed by Nicholas Federici, who is the traffic engineer, and then Matthew Jarmel, who is the architect who's designed the buildings that we'll present to you. Our clients have owned this property for some time, In fact, Louis and I and other members of the team have been working with our clients on this property, on this project, for over 7 years. And during those 7 years, the plan has gone through a very considerable evolution. The intensity of the development has changed dramatically. And what we're going to present to you is not the application that we started with. There are 3 points that I would like to make certain that the board is aware of. They'll all be emphasized by each of the professionals as we go along. The first is that our clients took the step of purchasing a right-of-way out to Route 9. They purchased a right-of-way. It comes out alongside of KFC. It is wide enough to build a public street. We've gone to the DOT. The DOT has approved the design for it. So we will have an access to this site from Highway 9 directly. We already had about 285 feet of frontage down at the far end of the property near Home Depot. So now there are 2 access points on Route 9. That's the first point that I wanted to emphasize. The second is, although we have a very, very long frontage along Fort Plains Road, there is no access onto Fort Plains Road except to satisfy Chief Prochnow's requirement that there be an emergency fire entrance, a gated fire entrance. There's no other access to Fort Plains Road. So we will not be sending any traffic from this site out to Fort Plains Road. There is no restriction in your ordinance from using Fort Plains Road, but we have a residential community across the street, and our clients made the decision to voluntarily give up their access to Fort Plains Road. Instead of access, you'll hear that there's a substantial amount of berming and landscaping. And after Shari Spiro's comments last week, there'll be substantially more landscaping and berming in that area. She has made it clear what she's looking for, and we indicated we're willing to do so. And the third introductory point that I wanted to share with you is this is a property that has historically had a residential bungalow community on it. There has been a number of times that the township has asked that the applicant bring those bungalows to a conclusion. And the applicant has agreed with the township that they will be brought to a conclusion. Mr. Aguiar is here. We can tell you we'll be in the municipal court confirming that on the record in early September. But your applicant is going to remove the residential element from the site. Your applicant is agreeing not to use Fort Plains Road for any access purposes, has gone out to buy the Route 9 access, which will be a material presentation, and has the 2 uses on the property. The self-storage use was not a permitted use at the time that we filed this application. It became a permitted use since we filed it, but jurisdiction remains vested with this board. The flex building, although there is a flex ordinance, and you'll hear from our engineer that we follow the flex ordinance, the flex buildings are not permitted uses, and we're asking for variance relief for those uses to be part of the property. A lot of detail will be required in the presentation. We'll make every effort to be efficient, but I do believe that we're going to take some time getting everything in front of the board this evening. So with permission, I'll ask that Mr. Zugner be sworn. We'll share his credentials with you and begin the substantive presentation. Is that acceptable?
That's
Mr.
acceptable, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell your last.
My name is Louis Zugner, Z-U-E-G-N-E-R.
Thank you for sharing this. So, Mr. Zugner, would you take a few moments to share with all here your professional and educational background?
Certainly. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as several other states. I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech. I've been practicing in this field for over 25 years. I have testified before numerous boards.
We'll accept your
including this
credentials, Mr.
board.
Zucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Zugner, I think you could begin by letting the board know the exhibits that you intend to rely upon. That way, the board's professionals can be ready to put them up as you need them.
Certainly. Hopefully you have all of these. The first is going to be labeled Overall Aerial Exhibit, and this is a aerial image of the property and the surroundings. Second is labeled the development exhibit. This is a closer-in aerial of the site and existing conditions.
Excuse me, did you send these to me?
These were emailed to you.
Not the ones that I got today from the architect.
No, these were emailed from my office this afternoon.
I don't think I got them.
If you don't have them, I do have hard copies.
Hold on 1 minute.
I might be able to forward the email to you. Excuse me? It was a late email. It might have been 5 o'clock.
I have nothing from 4:35 to 6:23. So, can you?
We could send it right now.
if
Shall,
this-
shall we take 5?
You could take 5, yeah.
All right, Eileen, we're going to take 5.
Okay.
The board is going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, Eileen, we're good to go.
The zoning board will now reconvene. And before we start, Mr. Pape, I numbered these A21 site layout plan.
Yes?
A22 is the development exhibit. A23 is the overall aerial exhibit. A24 is the revised buffer exhibit. And A25 is the site rendering.
Thank you.
I don't have them.
Got 'em?
They're all
Yes.
electronic,
Okay.
so.
So, thank you for that opportunity to load all that information. We'll go back to Mr. Zugner's presentation. If you could identify the exhibits from which you would like to testify, and then let Ms. Urbano know the first one that you'd like up as you begin your presentation.
Sure, just to run through the names quickly again, the overall aerial exhibit, which is up, that's A23, and then we'll move on from there. Development exhibit, site rendering, and then an alternative buffer.
I think from the aerial, if you could just describe the property to the board, describe the existing conditions, and take us around the property.
Certainly, and I'm sure the board is familiar with the area, but this helps us all get located. This is north up on this image. It's shown, give us a sense of where we are. Up and down through the middle of the plan is Route 9. You can see the limits of this parcel outlined in white. Fort Plains Road is to the left of that parcel, and it curves in and follows that white line on the left-hand side. Towards the bottom is West Farms Road. And then you can see a building just south or just below our property. That's the Home Depot. We'll get closer. The property sits in the highway development, the HD1 zone, which goes out towards Route 9 from our property. Mr. Pape had said earlier, this overall parcel, all of what you see there is just over 34 acres. I've just sort of mentioned, you can see here, the property sort of has a long and narrow, unique shape to it. Down on the bottom right-hand side, right along Route 9, that frontage is about 285 feet on Route 9. At the top left of that image, you can see, obviously you see woods there, but to the left of it towards Fort Plains Road, that's the location, we'll talk about some, where the bungalow community sits at the moment. It's 9 buildings, it's more than that in terms of actual units, and that, of course, we'll talk about as being removed as part of this application. If we could maybe switch at this point to what's labeled a development exhibit, show us a little closer to the site. So we zoom in a little bit here, you can start to see with the makeup of the existing parcel. I've color-coded it. I'll sort of go through what we're looking at. But the existing property, obviously there are woods you can see on a number of pieces of it. They're former fields, so those are generally open area. Some of them have started to become grown with smaller trees. The very top of this would be top left of the boundary or limit line is the Bannon Meadow Brook. There's a stream that runs through there. Well, we sectioned this into by colors to give a little bit of an understanding of the parcel. The red outlines where those bungalows sit today.
Does the applicant own all those bungalows at this time?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
The green is outlining essentially portions of the property that are not intended to be developed with this application. A big extent of that is encumbered by wetlands or stream or your stream buffer, your local ordinance on stream buffer. So it's not entirely undevelopable. Large parts of it are limited, though, by ecological restrictions like wetlands. And so that's just here shown as an outline to identify that portion of the property is not part of what's being proposed for development. The proposed area of development, which we'll go on with, is in the yellow outline. That yellow outline area is about 14 acres, so it's actually a little less than half the overall parcel. And then Mr. Papin also talked about access to Route 9. You can see a flag in yellow headed out to Route 9. Just above that flag, you might know, is a KFC restaurant. There is an access to a cul-de-sac now, and this application has control of that property, and there'll be some more talk about this later, but that can be configured as a new access point to the northern end of this parcel. As we get in, we'll go through some of the details on how the property works in the proposed development, but that access really provides a key secondary point of access to Route 9 and makes the site work and function in a much better fashion.
Mr. Chairman, quick
Yes.
question. Didn't we hear an application from somebody in landscaping businesses right on that property somewhere? Jen, did we?
Not on the KFC.
No,
It's
it's like right
couple
behind the Home
lots,
Depot,
it's
wasn't
a
there
couple lots
landscaping?
north of it.
Okay,
It's like 2 or 3 lots north of it.
it is, okay. Thanks. Sorry.
No, that's right. So when we, sort of our objectives, or is how we started when we began looking at this, and as Mr. Pape also said, this was quite some time ago. We've gone through a number of meetings with your professionals. The overall concept and plan has changed a number of times. What you can see from this in the yellow is that we were able to focus this commercial development towards Route 9, get the 2 accesses, and when we go through the plan, you'll see we face everything towards Route 9 and focus really buffers towards Fort Plains Road. I think we probably could switch.
Mr. Cantor, if I could just correct myself, it's like a couple lots south, closer to the Home Depot, but it's not the KFC.
Is that yellow though?
No, because that's the KFC lot that's vacant. There's a property in between, and then that property is the next lot over.
In like between Route 9 and the yellow area that,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
If it were possible, I'd like to switch to the site rendering, which I believe is A25.
Mr. Zugner? Question. So in the red area, you're demolishing. Are you returning it back to its natural state?
Answer is yes.
Yes, it would be, anything there would be removed, and it would just be its natural state.
The
I
applicant,
don't think that's what he asked. He's asking, are you going to like reforest, or are you going to replant? Not like you're just going to demolish it and leave it as is.
We didn't have a plan to do more than raise all of the buildings and to restore the area to, we didn't actually come up with it. It could be grass, it could be landscaping. But the commitment that we've made to the town is to raise the buildings, take the buildings down.
John?
We could work.
Yes, sir.
Give us a little background on this, please.
So there's currently 37 bungalows or units there. Because of new regulations that were passed by the state, and in doing some research, Township came to find out that there aren't rental COs for the bungalows. In the condition that they currently stand, they don't meet Howell Township ordinances or state housing requirements. And in addition, because the bungalows are so old, they would also have to conform with the new lead law that just came down within the last year. So there's also violations with regards to the septic systems through the Board of Health, essentially making these units not fit for habitability at this point. So we issued some summonses, fines were paid, and the last iteration of our agreement is that the owner decided that he wanted to move forward and demolish the units.
Thank you, sir.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, may we proceed, Mr.
So,
Chair?
Mr. Pape, I think the question still remains as to, are you planning to kind of re-landscape the area?
I think the best answer I can give to you is the honest one. We had not come up with a regrading, restoration plan, but we certainly will work with Shari Spiro to come up with a restoration regrading plan.
Take out the old septic systems.
Oh, they all have to be removed, that's part of the...
Right, and we're gonna
Wells.
clean fill, the whole thing?
Well, septic system, removal of all of the buildings, removal of all potential contamination. I think there may be some asbestos.
And then the applicant will work with Cherry Sparrow to maybe reforest that area.
Reforest or work with Shari as she directs.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Are there any oil tanks on the presence for heat?
Not that I know of. I don't think that there was oil heat. I'm pretty sure that it was propane heat.
Propane.
Yeah, but we've agreed that there'll be total, everything will be done to the health department and the zoning office
Thank you, Mr.
requirements.
So, and Mr. Pape, would it be, will the applicant obviously agree to satisfy any Howell Township demolition permit requirements for all of those structures? I do know, working on some projects for the municipality, they do have an extensive checklist of all the items that need to be checked for on these type of properties, including tanks and the like. So, obtaining those approvals, I think, will cover that as part of this.
We do agree, and we've had meetings with John and with Matt Howard, and earlier with Joe Clark about all of this, and we are in agreement as to what we will do, all the permits that we'll take out. We know that there's a lengthy lead time on those, so we are starting the lead time on those, but we'll agree that everything is going to be removed pursuant to demolition permits.
Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on Mr. Ryan's concern of the oil tanks. I mean, that'd be a DEP thing. Would that come up, John, if they were to demo and?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
great.
the construction permit for demo has an extensive list. So outside agencies would need to give their approvals, such as Board of Health, for any septic system that gets abandoned, any wells. Fire Bureau also checks for any in-ground tanks. I believe the propane tanks are all above ground. So
propane,
there's an extensive checklist and inspection process that goes along with demo. And then I believe an engineering component is just basically stabilizing the area. So nothing formal in the sense that, and we haven't spoken about this, but with regards to planting anything in addition, but some kind of stabilization so that there's no runoff. And there might be some DEP oversight depending on any sensitive land that's in that area.
That's right.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zugner, we're ready.
I have a question.
Oh, wait,
Mr.
Mr.
Pape,
Morello.
are these bungalows currently occupied with residents?
Most of them are, yes.
And what happens to these residents? I mean, I don't know how it works. In a situation like this, where you're raising buildings that people live in, is there a step to help these people find new housing?
Your township ordinances have certain requirements with regard to relocation. There are no requirements for this type of relocation. Everyone who is there, and I don't handle this part of it, there's separate counsel who does, But everyone that's there has a verbal lease. They can be brought to a conclusion on a 30-day notice, and it's my understanding that process has started, that the notices have been sent out, and we're keeping the town fully informed as we go through those steps.
Okay, thanks.
No,
Yeah.
you have to wait for the public portion.
Mr. Barillo, these bungalows have been a problem, a problem for the town for quite some time. They're non-compliant, there's code issues, so I understand your concern. It's not really our purview here, but my recommendation is that they go. We've been trying to get them to go for 7 years.
Like I said, my concern is there are 37 families that...
I understand that, but at the end of the
may need
day,
some
you
help.
cannot consider that as part of this land use application. That's a totally separate issue. And at the end of the day, from a land use perspective, the bungalows need to go.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zugner.
Thank you.
If we might switch to 825, site rendering. Thank you. So now I've just mentioned that this is a slightly twisted view from where we were before to make it fit this display. So north is now more to the left than it is straight up.
This is the yellow outline, right?
This is focused on the yellow outline.
Okay, thank you.
When we looked at this development portion of the site, what I would note is that in many ways, because of its shape and configuration, there was an opportunity to get multiple but complementary uses. And we'll go through what these buildings are, but in some of the initial description by Mr. Pape, there are 2 flex space buildings, and there is a self-storage building. And I think this also came up earlier, as we started that concept with these multiple uses, initially the self-storage was not permitted, but there was a change to the ordinance. So the building to the right there, closest to Route 9 as self-storage, is a permitted use. The flex space, although not permitted in the HD1 zone, you do have standards for flex space within Howell, and we did our best to follow those standards to create this flex space. And before I get into a little more detail, just a reminder, I think this was mentioned earlier, as a use variance application, this is not a full site plan, fully engineered plans. But in this instance, we have done a significant amount of design work. Obviously, we talked about the time frame from when we started, the work we've done with your professionals. So this is a very well established and understood plan as being fully buildable, that we've done a lot of work. It's just not 100% engineered. The overview of what we do have proposed here. The 2 flex space buildings, you can see on there, they're labeled A1 and A2. And there'll be more description about the buildings themselves, but these are 1-story buildings. They do have some office space within them. The building A1 to the left is a little over 60,000 square feet, 62,000. Building A2, also 1-story, is 65,000 square feet, approximately. And then the self-storage building, this is a multi-story building. This is a 4-story building, and it is a footprint of 36,645 square feet. You can see also on this plan along the bottom, while we didn't complete a full landscaping of the entire site, we did want to focus in on how we would substantiate and maintain a buffer towards Fort Plains Road. We've already talked about how we don't have, other than meandering gated emergency access, which is to the far left there, the furthest point left. We have a 50-foot residential buffer there. And in the plans we have submitted, we've graded that with approximately 8-foot tall berm, and we've shown landscaping. That's the main focus of what we'll get into in terms of how we've created this plan, to maintain that 50-foot buffer in the most significant way. Also show you a little bit, one of your professionals, Ms. Spiro, talked to us a little bit about considering alternatives to that. There are a number of large existing trees near the bend in Fort Plains Road, and I'll bring it up a little bit later, but I'll show you there's an area of trees there where this buffer may be better off if we preserve those existing trees and limit the constructed berm. Also here, we're just looking at it from the overall perspective, key element is that there is public sewer and water available for this site. Running would be up and down on this view, left, the very left edge, just outside of the pavement. There's a sewer easement that exists and a sewer line that's already there that serves properties out at Route 9. So we are able to connect to sewer and to water. I probably could talk a little bit about how potentially through that sewer easement, sewer could be made available to other commercial sites along Route 9. I believe there's some consideration for other redevelopment or commercial development in this area.
With your permission, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. Mr. Chair, members of the board, some 20-plus years ago, there was a joint venture between the owners of the CME building, the owner of the KFC, and I think one other property owner, and together they...
Chapter House.
Thank you, the Chapter House. They got together and they this is 20-some years ago, before our clients bought the property that we're presenting to you, they went to the then property owner, a gentleman named Mark Engel, and they negotiated and purchased a 20-foot wide easement so that they could bring sanitary sewer from Fort Plains Road up to the properties on Route 9. It wasn't otherwise available. This was coincidental with the construction of the Toscana community and the construction of Home Depot when new sewer and water lines were introduced in Fort Plains Road. So this private connection to that was put in place. There is a sewer line there that provides sewer service to those three properties on Route 9. I do not know if the actual dimensions of that pipe can handle further growth, but the easement can. And I know that there is a goal to bring sanitary sewer up to the Route 9 corridor, and I want to make it very clear that our clients don't control the ownership of the sewer line, but they do control the property and the easement, and they will certainly work with the town as requested to allow further sewer or water lines in that easement so that sewer and water can be brought up to Route 9. It's our understanding that is a goal that came out of your recent redevelopment plan.
So, Ken, I just want to ask a clarifying question for Mr. Zerner. So, you're saying the diameter, the capacity of that sewer main from Fort Plains through the easement to the KFC is not of sufficient size to handle
I don't know.
your proposed development?
So we haven't, there's capacity in that pipe. What we haven't looked at is who would connect to it and what the flow requirements would be. So I don't know that there's unlimited capacity, but I believe that it is a 6-inch line in the easement.
So if this were furthered to site plan, you would do that analysis and future development and then replace if it's needed to upsize the line to handle a future development?
Charlie, we can make the easement available. We can allow people who want to put an upsized line, but we're not upsizing the line for all of those highway properties. We're making this route to Fort Plains Road available to anyone.
So as it sits today, you can connect into that line without increasing the size of the line, and it has capacity?
Yeah, there's capacity. When the line was done those 20-some years ago, it was because there was capacity for this site to be developed with a very intense office park.
I just want to make the distinction, so it's not like we're upsizing the line to allow for other additional future users upstream of it. You can utilize the line that's there, so it's in the existing condition can serve your use as it's needed. So I just want to clarify that for the board.
And it's the easement that provides an opportunity to get to the sewer line that we're making available to anyone.
And then as far as the water service, is there public water in Fort Plains or Route 9 that the applicant contemplates connecting to?
So there's water and sewer in Fort Plains, and as you may know, Fort Plains was recently paved. And this property owner had worked with New Jersey American to ensure that utility stubs were brought into the property outside of the pavement. So there's the potential to connect to utilities without disrupting the pavement.
Okay. And I just wanted to ask that because it has been paved, and usually we have a moratorium period that doesn't allow opening of the road without repaving. So if there is stubs, knock on wood, there should not be a need to open the road for making connection in the future.
Can I just go back to the sewer? Because
Sure.
this was not my understanding when we've had these conversations. My understanding was that the sewer was available to be tied into, not that the easement was available to be utilized. So now that's a different situation.
So the sewer line, I do not know the actual capacity of the sewer line. It was put in as a 6-inch line. People are allowed to, will allow people to tie into that. I can't guarantee that all of the people on Route 9 who want to tie in are going to fit into that line.
So what I'm asking you, and quite honestly, we discussed this at the TRC, that this is something that was definitely going to come up. You're clearly not going to finish tonight because Christina's not here, but I want to know what the capacity of that line is and how many of these properties would have the ability to tie in directly before someone else would have to put a sewer line in. Because I'm assuming that the provision of, enabling additional properties to tie into sewer, which right now they're not capable of doing, is going to go towards your positive criteria. And so I need to understand what exactly that means before we get to that piece. Because saying the easement's available, for a small contractor that's in a single, like in a house where, he's a one-man shop, extending sewer all the way back to Fort Plains Road is a sizable expense versus tying into a line that's right next to his house or next to the office. And so is it really available? Because to the north of you, KFC, CME, Chapter House, they're already accessing sewer. So, Marcolite is not going to be able to tie into this. So you're talking about these small lots that front on Route 9 that have single-family homes on them that have been used for whatever or are vacant, and what is the capability of them to tie in to an existing sewer versus putting them in a position of having to run sewer? Because that's a very different financial situation, and as far as I'm concerned, changes the positive criteria a bit.
Understood, and we'll do the analysis.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Vice Chair, go ahead.
could you tie in the sewer lines where the bungalows were, possibly, as another location?
No,
No, that's okay.
no, they cannot. That's not where the line is. And I just want to go back to the bungalows, because I know everyone seems super concerned. These people are living in substandard conditions, in structures that are not habitable, not up to code, have been not legal for years and years. And so, they've already agreed, separate and apart from this application, that those bungalows are going. So I just don't want you guys to spend a lot of time worrying about the bungalows, because they're going. Regardless, there's a municipal court action associated with them. The settlement is that they're going away. They're going away. Whether you guys approve this application or you don't approve the application, the bungalows are going away. So I don't want to spend a lot of time worrying about them, because as part of this application, it's as if they're not there.
So when the bungalows are gone,
Yeah?
is that plot of land developable for apartments?
First of all, it's not zoned for that, so no. And secondly, this applicant has not proposed that. And there's no access to Fort Plains Road associated with this application. So that would require somebody to file a separate application, maybe, maybe not, but at the end of the day, they would have to come back before you and provide justification, and then access the road that they've committed not to accessing, which I'm assuming Andy has written down as a condition of approval, that there will be no access to Fort Plains Road. And so my guess is no.
Charlie?
Yeah, so and just to further that, right, they're asking for approval for multiple uses and multiple structures on the property, so any addition to the property in the future would require them to come back to the board for adding additional and exacerbating the nonconformity, so it's not like you can just do it as a planning board application. There's, a lot of things that would need to happen.
But it could happen under this application if it was added.
Yeah, they're currently not proposing any proposed structures up there. It's just the rate.
Mr. Chair, this application has been in the hopper for 7 years. It came in with a whole host of things that I was less than enthusiastic about. They came back with another whole host of things which I was less than enthusiastic about. We're now here 7 years later. I would venture to guess the application is not going to be amended to include apartments at that location. They were told very clearly that the site is tight, you have multiple principal uses already being proposed, apartments would not be looked on favorably, and so therefore, I would highly doubt that this applicant is going to come back with that application. Could they? Maybe, but then it comes back to you to decide whether or not you'd be willing to entertain it. But you're not obligated to because they're here at the zoning board for a use variance.
And to give additional clarity to that too, so the property is long and narrow, but there are, pretty much north of what they're currently proposing to develop, there are a significant amount of environmental constraints, wetlands, a stream, potential flood hazard area, that would make development of the northern portion of the site limited and, northern and western portion of the site limited and restricted, so.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Zogna.
Mr. Chair, I can tell you that we have been working on these plans for that long period of time. There's no ambition to build an apartment complex on that portion of the property.
Mr. Pape, no stone unturned.
Appreciate the depth of the question.
Okay.
Mr. Zogna, we're back to you.
Yeah. Okay if I go through some of the design elements?
I think that would be excellent.
So again, not a full site plan before you, but we did go through and understand the site. So a number of the design elements and things we looked at and presented to your professionals and submitted to you in the plans. First would be grading. The majority of this property, or the section here, will be highlighted in yellow, in its current condition, runs to the north, runs towards that green area. There's a small portion closest to Route 9 where it's graded towards Route 9 now. In the proposed condition, we talk about the stormwater side, but there's a fair amount of grading that happens on this site. There are a number of retaining walls that are proposed as part of this site, most of which you would not see from outside of the site. In particular, there are retaining walls close to Route 9 in and around the self-storage building. While not highly visible, in your ordinance, walls and fences are all under a similar section. So there will be relief required for those retaining walls because they're in the front yard. Again, they're not very visible, they're not very high. I believe we probably would present them in full at the time of site plan. I want to make you aware of the fact that there would be walls there as part of the grading plan. Some of that ties into the next element, which is drainage. We've done quite a bit of extensive work in terms of design, geotech, and soil borings on the site. And the general effort with stormwater is to get all of this water towards the north and not out to Route 9. If we could switch back to the 825.
Site rendering.
Perfect. There's a myriad of different elements in this stormwater design. You can see in a slightly grayed or bluer color, those are all elements of surface water basins. What you can't really see or identify in this, there's a whole number of underground stormwater features under portions of parking throughout. It meets the newest rules. We went through extensive amount to show that, and I believe Mr. Cunliffe would agree, while not completed, we've done enough to show that this is a feasible design, that this would work. And it takes the stormwater to two outfalls to, on this plan, the left. And that's how some of the grading in the walls, because of all these elements, that's what has us need some of those retaining walls in the front yard.
If you could identify what the front yard is, I think that this property is somewhat unique. If you just identify where the front yard is and point out, although it's a front yard, it's not functioning as a front yard.
Correct. So it's where the front yard setback would fall, and these are the dimensions off of Route 9 surrounding the self-storage building. So there's a stormwater basin you can see in like a bluish color, not quite on Route 9, but it's directly in front of the self-storage building to the left of our access to Route 9. There's some retaining walls as part of that stormwater basin. And then towards the property line, all the way to the right, separating us from Home Depot, to make some of the grading work there at that property line, there's some retaining walls. They fit within the front yard setback, but they're not literally in front of the building separating us from Route 9.
If you could clarify, these walls are, they're visible from the buildings on this site. They are not intended to be visible from the surrounding properties.
Correct. If you were driving Route 9, you would not see these. If you're in the Home Depot parking lot, you would not see these.
And you're comfortable that your stormwater design will ultimately pass Mr. Cunliffe's tests?
I'm very confident, yes.
I'm sure Mr. Cunliffe will share his comments on that before we conclude. Would you continue going through the...
Sure. One other element with stormwater. So to the left of this plan, among other constraints, and I'm sure you're familiar with your own stream corridor buffer, there is a limiting line there of the stream corridor buffer. There is an existing pipe that runs essentially from a stormwater facility on the KFC lot to the top left of this plan through our property to wetlands. It's an existing pipe with an existing outfall. And really the best design for our site, most sensible, is that we would connect to that pipe with the outfall from our basin, so that we ultimately have one point of discharge into the wetlands. To connect to that pipe, we do disturb or would go through the stream corridor buffer. It's in an open area, it doesn't require removal of trees. It really is the most sensible design. It probably, if we were to create a whole different outfall somewhere else, would actually be as much or more significant disturbance. So we are required to apply for relief for disturbance within the stream corridor buffer, but I think that it's a reasonable part of the design.
So Charlie,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
when you go through a stream corridor buffer, do you go above it, underneath it? How do you prevent blockage of the stream corridor?
So it's underneath, it's going to be below ground. So the KFC, when that was built, they installed their discharge through the subject property via an easement. Coming out of their property, there's a manhole, 10, 15 feet into the subject property. It turns and heads north and then discharges into the existing drainage feature on the site that ultimately heads north towards Bannon Meadow Brook. What Mr. Zugner said is accurate. So they could have created a fully, new discharge point, further increasing the disturbance into the stream corridor buffer. This would be, any type of a development on this site, this would be the preferred approach, tying into the existing manhole structure, co-locating stormwater infrastructure to try to minimize disturbance into those areas. And our ordinance does allow encroachment into the stream corridor buffer, and I think potentially into the stream corridor as well for stormwater outfalls and the like. But usually it requires the applicant to demonstrate that there's no other alternative means. So, could they have run their own new outfall all the way into the ditch or the water feature there? Yes. Co-locating with an existing outfall and an existing conveyance system would be the preferred approach here.
Next question.
Yes.
Flex space, oils, hazardous materials, painting, that's all going into the sewer, or is it all going into the stream corridor?
So all the infrastructure now under the new stormwater management rules has to be green infrastructure. There's infiltration component, there's pre-treatment requirements if you want to use exfiltration and the like. I'll let Mr. Pape and the applicant talk about who they're intending for these flex spaces. You know, the board on other quasi-flex spaces in the past has, you know, required restrictions on no hazardous, you know, flammable, you know, no vehicle maintenance on the site and things like that. I think those are all things we need to hear from, you know, Mr. Pape and the applicant on what's proposed and what's not being proposed on the site. Most of the other flex space that we've seen, you know, if you think about Associates Business Park up on Okerson Road, have been like 5,000, 10,000 square foot tenant spaces. This is a little bit larger than that. So, you know, those smaller tenant spaces tend to be more your HVAC contractors. You know, I think Safe Light went into some of those spaces up there. You know, as part of this process, I think we want to hear maybe anticipated users, what, you know, what is and what is not contemplated for this quote-unquote flex space.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions? We're good? Okay, we're good.
Sure. To respond to the request for what type of tenants are we targeting, our architect who designed the building is prepared, when it's his turn to speak to this board, that he's prepared to take you through what the building has been designed for and what the target tenant is. And we're very much aware of the types of restrictions that have been imposed on other flex buildings, and we fully anticipate hearing from the board with regard to those.
Are you planning on having the applicant testify?
We're going to have Mr. Jarmel make the testimony with regard to operations.
I mean,
Before we conclude, we can certainly ask one of the representatives of the three partners, one of them to testify. I can tell you I did not prepare the witness, the owner of the property, to testify this evening. But
I think that that's something that the board is going to be looking for way before the architect gets up and testifies.
Due diligence.
Yeah, I agree.
got it. Owner's testimony. Back to you, Mr. Z.
Sure. I know there will be further testimony on traffic, but a few points, if I could, on circulation and the use of the parking lot. If we could go back to 825 again. Thank you. So again, we spoke about the 2 points of ingress or egress. Starting to the left there where we come in, I know we've referred to it as the KFC, but the northerly entrance. In our design, the intent is that that's much more focused for use at the flex space buildings. Thinking being that vehicles could come in and circulate and have access to the flex space buildings and leave out of that point. It's constructed to accommodate, obviously, cars, vehicles, vans, and even standard-sized tractor-trailers for deliveries. If a larger vehicle like that were to come into the site and not leave that entrance, which would be marked to leave that way, they are capable of circulating and getting out the site, so no one would get stuck going to the self-storage area. You can see that, dimensionally the area is created for easy access on one side for loading and larger vehicles, and then separates out to the other side of the flex space building for passenger vehicles. Keeping those separated provides benefits for circulation within the site. Separately, we would see the self-storage building is operating more with access directly from Route 9 at the right-hand side. There's circulation around the entirety of that building. The back of that building, which would be a loop around it, is one way. And that's the only section of the parking area at all that's one way. It is safe, it's functional, was reviewed by your fire chief, and we believe we've addressed his concerns as well. As we mentioned before, the emergency access point was added at his request.
Where is that on the plan? Because it's hard for me to...
It's not the most clear, but if you see at the bottom left of our site, left of where the proposed landscaping is, and it's purposely curved somewhat so that as you then landscape that, there's not a direct view through that to the site. Trying to obscure it by bending it.
And that's gated.
Would be gated.
We met on 2 separate occasions in January and again this month with Chief Prochnow to go over the design. The goal was to make certain that all of his requirements were part of the plan, and I can tell you that, as evidenced by his correspondence, this plan is acceptable to him. He does want there to be a Knox box gate that only the firemen can open, and that driveway would have no other purpose.
In terms of parking and loading, some sort of basic numbers, but the flex space building would have a mix of sort of at-grade direct access into the building and then a loading dock where a truck could back up. The self-storage would also have loading, much more focused on a van or a car, and there would be underneath the building 3 parking spaces envisioned directly for loading or unloading, and then there's a designated loading area, the very tip or right end of that building, that could accommodate 2 vehicles. Overall, this site has, for vehicles, passenger vehicles, 112 parking spaces. The requirement would be 107 parking spaces, and then if you take the EV credit, it would be 97 required. So even without the EV credit, there's more than sufficient parking for passenger vehicles. There's some sort of logical separation to the elements, so as sort of reference, 82 parking spaces sort of coincide or along the flex space buildings. 15 are proximate to the self-storage building. I'm sure you know that actual operation of a self-storage building is not generally very highly intense for parking. People come, drop stuff off, and then leave.
Mr. Zugner, what if one of these spaces were occupied by a tenant that had a significant number of fleet vehicles? So, for example, like a landscape contractor that has a number of vehicles with trailers that needed to be stored. You don't have any oversized vehicle spaces, and my experience is that those vehicles are oftentimes parked all over the place haphazardly and could negatively impact the other flex space tenants in the center. Is there some provision to restrict fleet vehicles, or are you going to put a restriction on the number of vehicles each tenant is permitted to park outside overnight? How are you planning on handling that?
So I'm going to answer for the applicant. We have gone over that. The potential of there being a fleet of vehicles could completely disrupt the parking field. So we would stipulate that for each demised area, there would be a maximum number of vehicles that could be parked overnight. Right now, we have, I think the modules are somewhere in the Mr. Tarmel, the modules are in the 5,000 to 7,000 foot range.
They can.
So, and we would put a maximum number of overnight parking on the property, and we would require that the overnight parking not be in the parking lot, it would be in the loading zone only.
Oh, Mr. Pape, I thought you would tell me that, of course, the applicant's going to file for a Title 39 on this as well, right?
You're going to tell me I have to?
Yes.
So, Mr. Pape, are you going to give me a number of vehicles or a type of vehicle? And I'm not 100% comfortable with you. First of all, I know Charlie's going to jump in here and talk about the number of loading spots, because you said that you took our flex ordinance into consideration, but you don't comply in terms of the number of loading spaces. So I just honestly feel like that should be a little clearer in terms of how many, and let's be honest, and I know that Lewis is not the right witness, but your flex spaces are significant in size. Like, we don't typically see 30,000+ square feet for one tenant space. So I'm curious, like, are you going to restrict it to 2? Like, what's the restriction? Because to say you're going to restrict it but not give us the details is not helping us.
And it kind of, Ken, just to go along with that comment with the number of loading spaces. So we're in the HD1S, which is south of, that's Lanesville, right? Or where that's
That's
permitted?
south of Lansing,
Yeah, where it is a conditional use, so it's not a permitted use here, it's not a conditional use here. But we do have standards in the south part of town, and the intent is to limit the number of loading zones by like gross floor area. So it's 1 per 7,500 square feet, I think is the requirement. They have like 1 per 5,300 plus or minus here. So, you know, traditionally smaller flex spaces require less loading areas, you know. Large areas with more loading zones kind of is more traditionally warehousing. So I think that's also something that the applicants need to clarify for the board is, these are two buildings with, you know, 5, 6 different tenant spaces. Is there any possibility that these could be all owned and operated by one tenant? Because then it's not flex, it's maybe warehouse. And we're talking about different kind of
And that's
people.
why Mr. Zugner mentioned that the KFC egress, ingress can handle tractor-trailer. So, you know, I don't see a tractor-trailer making a hell of a good right turn there. I mean, it's got to go in and around the building, right? So that is the primary in and out by the KFC. And if that is nothing but long boxes, I mean, it's something to consider. So, Mr. Pape,
That's
we need...
typically not what we see with flex, right?
Right.
So we typically see flex as contractors that have
16-footers, 18-footers, 22-footers, 25 maybe.
not
that's it.
even,
Yeah.
you know, you're talking an HVAC contractor, electrical contractor. So that's why I very much think that we need to hear from the applicant in terms of the intentions here, because, you know, I don't think the architect is, I mean, he can talk about how he designed the building, but he was directed to design it under a specific purpose, and the applicant should be able to discuss it before the architect gets up to justify it.
Mr. Chair, members of the professional team, recently, going over the plans with your professionals, we did learn that we had, I think, 2 extra overhead doors that have to be removed to be consistent with your flex design, and they'll be removed. And we also discussed fleet vehicles. We'll come up with a program, a specific program for the limitation of overnight parking of vehicles, and then we can go over the types of vehicles that we're anticipating when Mr. Federici is before you. The goal is to create the spaces that are compatible with the small contractor's needs. This is not, there's no intention to build a warehouse here. This is intended to be true flex. I can tell that you're going to need to hear more specific information to give those assurances to the board. We'll make sure that they come before we conclude. Back to Lewis.
Back to Lewis.
So we're talking about vehicle parking spaces, and I said a certain number approximate to the flex and the self-storage. There's also, you can see in the center top, another 15 vehicle spaces that sort of called the surplus space location mixed between the two buildings. Among all the vehicle parking, that is shown with 10 EV spaces and 5 ADA spaces. But again, we didn't need the EV reduction to meet the parking. We would have met it with or without.
And the EV charging stations are open to the public.
There's no restriction on who can use them. There are the types of, when you have an EV charging station that's open to the public has access to them for a fee, for a charge.
Well, it'll be on their app, and they'll say, okay, it's over here, and they're going to race to over there.
App or credit card?
Yes, I mean,
App or
so-
credit card?
What level of charging station are we talking about? Because a level 1 charging station is not going to do the general public any good, because it'll need to charge for 8+ hours to get like 20 miles. So, right? So unless it's level 2 or above, it doesn't do the public any good.
Level 2 of the order statute said. Okay. Jennifer, I'm fairly certain it's level 2, but that's not testimony. I have to verify it.
Okay, thank you.
We talked a bit about the buffers. So in this application here for use variance, really what we focused on in terms of landscaping was simply the buffer. And we've spoken with Ms. Spiro. She has said that when we come for a site plan, she's going to insist on a much more densely planted buffer where we have it, in addition to reviewing the rest of the landscaping. But again, it is shown with an 8-foot landscape berm. And if I could for a moment, because I talked about this earlier, there should be one that says alternate or revised buffer.
24,
A24.
A24, please. During a meeting with Ms. Spiro, she identified that there's a very substantial mature forested area that's located at the southern end of our property. And she asked that we be mindful of it and see if there's a way that we could work it into the ultimate buffer. I think that's what we're going to go to.
So you can see just below our property where Fort Plains curves, there's actually like a triangle. It's part of the Home Depot property. There's significant trees there in that curve, and that ties right into trees on our property. And we've sort of cut off the proposed landscaping. You can see that there are significant trees throughout there. And she was talking about preserving what are really the mature and big trees. There's also a section there that are other sort of new growth, smaller trees, and that's most likely where we would build the berm and thoroughly plant it. I would fully expect as we went through this process that we'd spend a lot of time with Ms. Spiro to get the right plantings and the right density and figure out exactly where that tree line falls so that we're saving the right trees and removing ones that are unsuitable.
Mr. Chair, we had the opportunity to meet with Shari Spiro last week. We knew that she wasn't going to be here this evening. She has personal responsibilities this evening, but we promised her that we'd make these statements on the record, that we had worked with her and we were mindful of what her goals were.
And it just was important to me to show this because it's not a slight difference there in terms of the length of the berm, right? There are quite a few trees, and so it would appear very different one way or the other. We have I believe we've talked pretty well in terms of utilities on the sewer and water. We do have trash enclosures. We have 3 shown, 1 for each building in this layout. There's easy access to
Block
those.
enclosures?
Masonry enclosures. And then 2 elements I would normally talk about to some extent, but here have less significance just because of the stage of where we are in the application: signage and lighting.
Signage. Let's go to signage. So you have 2 ingress, egress. Are they both going to advertise each other? Or is it going to be one specific for flex and one specific for storage? Jen?
I don't know. I asked the same question.
We anticipate there'll be a monument sign at each driveway and that the monument sign at the southern end is oriented towards the self-storage. The monument sign at the northern end is identifying that there's a flex park behind the KFC.
And the one piece I would add, and it's not something that was part of what was submitted here, but a site like this would have wayfinding signage. So I would expect a signage programmed, and we would show it at site plan, that identified to everyone where and how to circulate this site. And as Mr. Pape said, 2 different monument signs. So while you can interweave this site, it does function as self-storage and as flex space.
To just clarify on the signage, so on the southern end of the site, you do have frontage on Route 9, so you could place a sign, on the Route 9 frontage there. At the easement through the KFC, are we saying there's a monument sign that's going to go by Route 9 in the easement, and does the applicant have rights to put a sign there?
The applicant does have those rights to put a sign there. That's where we're proposing a monument.
Is that shown on the plan right now, or you're just saying at the time of site plan, you're going to?
There's no signage that is proposed as part of the use variance. It would be site plan.
So can I get back to the buffer? So I can understand that you've provided for buffering from the residential units. However, There are two properties on Route 9 that are residential, and you're encroaching into the buffer. And I know that you guys reached out, had not heard back. Mr. Aguirre has just indicated that those two properties are rentals, so you would not comply with the buffer backing up to lots, I think, what is it, 10 and 11, Charlie?
Both. So when we looked at it, and certainly be happy to spend more time on it, we do respect the residential buffer, even though it's all HD1 zone, where we identified potential residences. I actually think one of them might even be operating as a business, but we still...
It's not. So I'm just going to tell you that before you go down that path, the ordinance says residential use or zone.
Right.
So I get the fact that it's an HD1 zone, but if it's being used as a residence, it's respected as a residence and requires the buffer.
And our intent was to do that. I believe we have. There's a gap where we show the parking, so it's identified on that plan as lots 10 and 11. And we don't believe either of those has any residential use on it. One is vacant of all buildings, and the other has a building which is barely standing and no one occupies it, is my understanding.
I went there this evening before coming here, and the structure that's standing is completely vacant. It appears to be in very, very poor condition. It also has a small wooden sign in the front yard that has the remnants of advertising, and then the other one is a vacant lot. And I also wrote to Mr. Hutchinson to ask if he could confirm how he is listing lots 10 and 11. I didn't get that response back, but we certainly owe that information to the board.
I guess the question, taking the buffer aside, right? So you're providing more parking spaces than is required by ordinance. If you eliminated those 15 parking spaces from the buffer, would you still comply with the parking ordinance requirement?
Can you lose 15?
We could lose those if we use the EV credit,
Which you're allowed
which I'm permitted to do.
2 for 1 and not a maximum reduction of 10%, right?
With the EV credit, our required is 97, and we have 112 at the moment.
We're not going to finish this evening,
Yeah.
so I understand that the appearance and whatnot, but we're going to definitely need more than just the appearance of it to, the township is very protective of its buffers, so we're going to need more of a demonstration than it looks vacant.
I'm certain that Mr. Hutchinson will provide his written response promptly.
Mr. Zugno? Lighting.
So we did not submit a lighting plan with the use variance application. I have taken some look at it. I'm very confident we could meet the ordinance or come up with substantially a functional plan to light the site, but it was not
Okay.
part of what we submitted.
All right, so now let's look at the flow on the map. Flow of traffic. So I'm going to the public storage unit. I'm coming in with a U-Haul, 18-footer. I'm going to the loading dock. I'm going to back into the loading dock. Now I got an 18-wheeler coming in, and it misses the entrance at the KFC. Now the 18-wheeler's got to come in, can't make that complete right, so it's got to go around the property. Is there enough space to circulate around?
This may be more of a question for Mr. Federici.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, because this all comes down to, conflict and deconflicting, right? When it comes to the multiple uses on this property and the traffic flow and the uses.
I know we've looked at all of this, I just don't want to answer what would be his
All right, so,
area.
Mr. Chair, would it be possible to make them two separate, where the south entrance is only used for the storage, and the north is only used?
You can't get to the back using the north driveway without going past the self-storage. You can't physically get there.
And what I'm saying is, what the chairman said is, if an 18-wheeler truck comes down, misses the north, they're going to try to come in through the south and get to their destination at the flex. Can we prevent that from happening by having a, I don't know what would be used, but dividing that so the 18-wheeler, and I don't know by signage or whatnot, but if he misses, he's got to go around, do a jug handle, go and try again.
I mean, certainly if you were to decrease the size of any of the buildings on the site, you know, you could separate the two entrances and essentially make them two separate sites where they don't have a shared access between them.
There you go, Charlie.
You know, I mean, that's up to the board, you know, and we'll let Mr. Zugner, and, you know, it sounds like we might be here for another meeting. But yes, I think that's a valid concern, is if, you know, someone's going 50 miles an hour in a tractor trailer and they don't know where the entrance is, and they come down to the southern entrance there, that's going to be a hard hairpin right turn to come into the site, and then, you know, you're going past all the
Or
self-storage.
are we preventing those long vehicles coming in because there's not a need for them if we're truly going with a flex space and keeping it smaller with the vehicles? So, Mr. Pape, it's a conundrum that we have, and we have to resolve that.
If it's a flex space, there's no reason to have a 40-foot. Maybe a 20, maybe a 16, but not a 40. And that would be a traffic and accident nightmare at both entrances. And lots 9 and 11 are both rentals. I'm familiar with both properties.
Mr. Ryan, you good?
I just have one follow-up to what Ms. Beam had, her concerns about the sewer system. With the water that's coming in off of Fort Plains Road, did I understand that correctly? That's where the tap-in will be?
The potable water, yes.
Okay. Is that also going to supply the sprinkler systems for these buildings?
I would let someone else talk about the building, but yes, that would be the supply for potable and for
Because for a
fire.
4-story building, you're going to need a 6 to 8 inch wide pipe dedicated just for that sprinkler system, I would imagine. And then whatever you need in the other 2 buildings. So would what's coming in off that be able to support the drinking water, the restroom waters, as well as,
So line it for planes of Maine.
So, I haven't gone through the full study, and I don't know the building, but there is sufficient water pressure and flow in Fort Plains Road to provide fire suppression for the building.
You've met with their water company, or they've issued you some kind of guidance on that, or have you made preliminary application for water and sewer?
We do not have an application with New Jersey American Water. That line was put in about 25 years ago when Home Depot was built, and it's a major trunk line in the Fort Plains Road.
I think, to Mr. Ryan's point, so we did have, you know, a warehouse application come back in to extend, you know, the approval and developer's agreement and things like that. And I know with that application, the water company told them that they could not actually pull from the public water main for fire suppression services, so they had to put in their own pump house and underground tanks and all that kind of stuff after the fact. So that would be something, if it's anticipated, I think the board might want to know that, especially since the tight is pretty tight as it is.
They're asking that we go to New Jersey American Water and get a commitment from them for firefighting water supply from their main.
Correct.
Got it. And that portion of the question makes much more sense to me. Yes, sometimes it ends up with a tank or something like that.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, board members, we're good? Okay, so for the public, we made a decision here that we're going to allow the public to come up, ask questions of the professional, the engineer only, no comments, and you'll have plenty of time for comments at the end of this application when we wrap it up and so forth. And you'll also have opportunity when the architect comes up and the planner comes up, and you could ask questions of them as well at that time. So anybody from the public, we're going to open it up. Go ahead. We got a motion. We're going to have a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Eileen?
At this time, the chairman has opened the hearing up for members of the public who have questions of the engineer only. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll be sworn in, and you can ask your questions.
Sir?
Hi, Daniel Martins.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely, yes.
Please state your name, spell your last, and provide your address.
And you can raise that mic so you can, perfect.
Daniel Martins, 12 Arrowwood Court, as you see on in the Toscana development. Okay, basically, I have just a lot of questions. This is being recorded, right? So you guys get a chance to kind of review this. So I just thought, being an engineer, this is kind of my food for thought.
You're asking the question of the engineer here,
Yeah.
sir. Go ahead.
So, building A1 and A2, how will it be used in the sense of, will there be hazardous materials, vehicle maintenance, welding, noxious gases, explosive materials? Will there be any manufacturing such as pharma? Is there going to be a noise issue for the development as it faces the development? I'm not quite sure, I don't understand why buildings A1, A2 don't just get moved a little bit to the northwest to avoid the encroachment that you have with those 15 spots. Because you're saying in the green area that you don't want to develop, but yet if you just go a little bit that way, you actually remove a lot of your issues there. When they're bringing vehicles in, is there going to be restrictions on jake braking? Will there be restrictions on roof usage for whoever does it?
Let him answer
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
One at a time. Let's,
One question at a time.
Mr. Zugner, go ahead.
Well, which question, where do we start?
The first.
What was the first question?
Hazardous materials, vehicle maintenance, welding, noxious gases, explosive materials, and/or manufacturing.
None of that was part of Mr. Zugner's testimony. He did not testify to uses. All of that must be placed on the record before we conclude, but it's not Mr. Zugner's question.
So restrictions for the same.
There will be a presentation of uses to the...
So then the next question was relative to the location of the buildings.
I'm not sure I totally follow your suggestion in terms of shifting the buildings.
Just over here. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yep.
So over here, we have that green section that we were talking about. I understand that's very nice that you don't want to encroach on that, but for this development, everybody seems to be really upset about this area in the sense of it not being deep enough to try and keep it away from the development we live in. If you move this over just enough, you wouldn't have to sit there and do this encroachment here, first off. Your building's here. All this is now undeveloped area that you say you're not going to develop, which I want to make sure is actually put in the record. You're not going to develop it, all right? And then this whole area can move here a little bit more, making it easier for whatever you're doing from the parking standpoint. It seems like you went down this far to actually make it a little bit inconvenient for yourself.
Mr. Zugner?
The buildings and parking cannot be shifted to what would be on the left on this plan. There are a number of restrictions, including a stream corridor buffer in your ordinance, as well as the sewer easement itself. We don't want to push things on top of the sewer easement.
Okay, that's fine.
So-
So to that end, have you done soil sampling? Because we were talking about the bungalows. The soil up there is very clay. I mean, it's very saturated with clay. You've got all of these little reservoirs for storm overflow. That storm overflow, whenever it rains significantly on Fort Plains, the flooding there sometimes takes weeks to drain off. These things are going to be having water all the time. What is your plan for mosquito control?
So we have done a pretty significant amount of geotechnical investigations for the stormwater. There actually are very different soils in slightly different parts of this site. So there are soils that are very restrictive, as you've mentioned. And there are areas that do have soils that do drain well. So we have our recharge into the ground focused in areas of good soil for recharge. And then the surface basins are designed to hold water and discharge it within 72 hours, which meets the requirements.
Will there be adequate fencing to keep people out of these areas. I'm worried about like my kids on bikes going up this little access road and then riding up and down here or skateboards. You got a ton of kids in this development that are just looking for spots to, you know, go somewhere else where it's a nice flat area to go play. And then you're gonna have all these parking spots in here. I mean, is there gonna be adequate fencing? I mean, you have a little gated thing here. That's not gonna keep some kid from walking around a gate. Is there gonna be fencing all around this thing?
I've just made a note, this use variance plan does not have a fence plan, other than the commitment that we have to have the Knox box gate, but we'll certainly sit down and work on a fencing plan. The concern of keeping residential children out of the site is an excellent one. We'll work it into the plan.
Thank you. The dumpsters, I love the fact that you're going to have some type of brick and mortar hiding the dumpsters, so on and so forth. What's going to be in the dumpsters, though, is if you're going to allow, like, pharma manufacturing, there's not anything that is, you know, precluding weird stuff getting into dumpsters. And then that smell. What if somebody decides to put in a cafe and has food remnants? That smell is going to carry over into the development. So is there going to be restrictions on what can be put in said dumpsters?
Well, I can tell you in a flex building, there is no food service, there is no restaurant, there is no cafe.
So when it comes to the storage units, or the self-storage, is there going to be restrictions on times of access? Or is it going to have parking lots to the point, night lights to the point where the entire thing is a stadium, and when I look out my front door, I see what looks to be like Giant Stadium off in the off of the side of the development. I mean, there's, you know, some places that have excessive lighting like this. I don't know how high the lighting's going to be for all this parking, but I mean, I like the fact, the reason I went out there is for country dark. I like to be able to sit in my backyard with a fire pit and not have gigantic lighting off in the distance. Is there going to be restrictions, or is there going to be, you know, some type of, time that the lighting's on?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so I would make the recommendation to the board if they were to act favorably on the use in the Skidsa site plan. We have had similar type of self-storage and those type of buildings that should butt residential, instead of wall-mounted lighting facing outwards, pole-mounted facing in towards the building with house side shields downward facing. The new stuff has all the cutoff in the back. Is that something Ken, the applicant, would agree to?
Yes.
Same thing with restrictions on roof usage. I know it sounds silly, but I don't know how many times I've seen a building go up, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, whatever those, multi-use people are doing, somehow or another, there's things happening on the roof. So also in the storage, what can be stored? There's got to be restrictions on flammables, hazardous, reactive, caustic, et cetera. Because I don't want like a Chernobyl happening, from somebody storing something the wrong way right next to my development. Is there going to be restrictions there?
There's statutory restrictions on the use of self-storage, and I've had the privilege of working with this board on self-storage restrictions here in town. I anticipate that we'll have a very similar protocol for this site.
Very good. I'm just finding out about this tonight, so I'm sorry I have a ton of questions. Last thing I have for now, and I'll wait for the next meeting. Water and power usage, will it be a generator? When's that going to fire up, and what fuel will it use, natural gas or diesel?
Being quite candid with you, we have not even approached the introduction of a generator for this facility.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public? Come on up. Please, of the engineer only.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Skillender.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your name, spell your last, and provide your address.
Jackie Skillender, Skillender. My business address is 1422 US Highway 9 South. We're a 32-year-old business in Howell Township. Thursday, I just bought the Marco Light property. So I am very, very proud to do business in this town. However, I'm a little worried about my septic. We're purely septic. I spoke to Tony Rodriguez. We're never getting a sewer, never getting a water line. How are you guys gonna make it that, my septic drains?
Where is your property?
If you pull up the other map,
You know, the only thing I'm to say is the board can't, when you use that, the board cannot see what you're pointing to. So it's not helpful. Ma'am, wait, hold on. What I'm saying is it's not helpful because the people who decide this aren't seeing what you're pointing at.
we're the three buildings in the middle of all those wonderful trees.
Yeah, I knew where she was.
It's the
We need your block and lot.
1422 US 9. It's the Markolite building,
Yes.
which is just north, basically, of like the chapter house by
Yes.
the jug handle, right?
We tried to get a sewer. We're not applicable to get a sewer. Tony Rodriguez, from New Jersey American Water, had told us that we're landlocked in. Where is the sewer line that you say that we can hook into? And what's the cost to a little business like us to go into that? Because what's gonna happen is as you build, and they build next to us and everything else, all the surfaces that we've had for all these years, and there is clay, where they drain into? We flood now, very, very badly in the back of us.
We're not going to have, Do you want to respond to what the anticipated impact on a septic system that is located at the Markolite property would be from this?
Because you're
proposed-
pushing all the water north, according to what your storm management plan is.
Charlie?
Yeah, so what you've seen to this point is a drastic difference than what they originally proposed as, over the 7-year period. They're required to comply with the Township Stormwater Control Ordinance and also the state rules. There is wetlands adjacent to the proposed development. There is a water course. Mr. Zugner, have you investigated whether there's any flood hazard area or riparian approvals required for your stormwater discharge?
We are in the process of submitting for our FHA determination on our site. We've done the study and analysis of where we believe it comes to, so it doesn't impact our area of development. But on the Bannon Meadow Brook, we're actually also looking to talk to DEP about that. Wouldn't affect us, but that might have even more of a significant flood hazard area on adjoining property.
The board is hearing this for a use variance, so it's bifurcated application. So if you do rule favorably and this goes to site plan, the township did just also this summer adopt a revised stormwater control ordinance, which was as a result of the state adopting inland flood rules. As part of that, there's increased, you have to design basically for future rainfall intensity as part of your stormwater management design. So I would say if the board is inclined to act favorably on the use variance, that they're going to also have to satisfy those requirements as part of their site plan approval. What you see before you now, I'm satisfied as far as from a stormwater perspective that it's realistic for what's being proposed. There's still some odds and ends that need to be cleaned up. It's a drastic difference than what they originally proposed when they first came in with their first development concept to this board.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? One at a time. Here we go. Andy?
Hello. Hi. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God? I do. Please state your name for the record, spell your last, and provide your address.
Antonello Bianco, B-I-A-N-C-O. I live in the Toscana community, 59 Arrowwood Court. Been a proud homeowner there for 21 years, so this has an impact for our future. A couple of questions I had that really were asked, but I didn't hear any answers. One, the time of the operation, accessibility. When is this thing going to close? Is it going to be up all night? I'm going to hear trucks and coming in and out. What is the specific time of use?
There will be operations testimony presented to the board. It's not this witness, so we'll go through that.
So you don't have
That's
that
the
answer.
next witness we're going to hear, correct?
Well, Mr. Chair, we'll have to take a break. I did not prepare, I have one of the three partners here this evening. I did not, all the witnesses were prepared. That's an 8-hour endeavor. I did not prepare his testimony. I prepared the two others. We'll follow your guidance. If you insist on him being next, we'll have to
It's
take
prudent, Mr. Pape. This is a very large application,
Yes, it is.
and it has an effect on the community.
Fully understand it. I did it, in our mind, it was engineer, traffic, architect, operations, planner. If you're seeing it differently, when we take a break,
Well,
we'll
this
figure
is
it
not
out.
the planning board. This is the zoning board of adjustment, and you're here for a reason.
Yeah, we usually hear operational
Yes.
early in the testimonies. That kind of guides us into the rest of it, so I concur.
All right, Mr. Zugner, can you answer the question? Or you're going to wait until operations?
But operations is not Mr.
Okay. Sir, can you ask the next question then, please? And you'll have an opportunity to ask more questions when operations is heard.
Okay. Without trying to get into comment, I'm curious, was a market analysis done for the requirement of such? I mean, I look up and down Route 9, I see stores that are just abandoned, not in use.
Mr.
I'm just wondering, in time, yeah, this might seem like it's needed, but then it just becomes abandoned.
The analysis that's done by our clients, the market analysis that's done by our clients is proprietary to them. I can tell you that we didn't spend the last 7 years working with the town to come up with this plan without having a strong sense of what the market demand for it is.
Okay, thank you.
Can that be made available
No,
to the
it's
public?
proprietary.
That's proprietary.
And honestly, that's not really a land use
Yeah.
factor. The board doesn't make decision based on the economics. It's really up to the applicant, whether they want to take that economic risk. That's not a factor for the board to consider.
Yes.
A question regarding the 4 planes facing side. I understand there's going to be trees and berm there. Is there also a consideration for a fence, kind of like what Home Depot has? They have a natural-looking fence and then trees. Creates a nice obscurity to the structure itself.
Mr. Martins, a few moments ago, did ask that we have a fence plan, and we agreed that we'll introduce a fence plan.
And a question regarding the footprint, the envelope. Can that be pushed back a little more? I mean, 50 feet is nice, but again, that's pretty close still to our development.
The 50-foot dimension is the town's ordinance. It's the requirement of the ordinance, and that's what the applicant is prepared to meet.
Question regarding construction. I assume all the construction vehicles, as this thing is being developed, will come from Route 9, nothing coming into 4 Plains for the most part, unless, certain landscaping things need to be done?
The actual, that plan is developed with the police department and the construction office at a later date. We have no intentions of using Fort Plains Road for any purpose.
The bungalows themselves, what phase does he plan to knock those things down and?
The removal of the bungalows, we bring it to this board's attention and the public's attention to demonstrate that there will not be a third use on the property. But all of the regulations are, John can tell you, there were complaints that were filed, they were resolved with the zoning officer. We are going to be in court placing it on the record. All of that has nothing to do with the timeline here. There's an aggressive timeline to bring all of that to a conclusion promptly. And it's not tied to any phasing of this project.
Actually, you bring up a good point. Assuming things go smooth with the board here, what is your anticipated timeline for this development?
Don't have one because the approval process is lengthy. There's a use variance followed by site plan, county planning board, Freehold soil, DEP, DOT, water, sewer approvals.
In your experience, what time are we looking at?
Anywhere from 1 to 5 years.
Lastly, the land that you are not using, allegedly, would that be considered giving back to the town for preservation, maybe a credit for some of the building? That would be nice.
I have no authority to make that statement. I'll record it and bring it to my client's attention that one of the neighbors has asked that we dedicate the remainder of the property to the town.
I would just state that the balance of the site is very heavily encumbered environmentally, and I'm not 100% sure the town's going to want it.
That's correct.
Like, I don't know that we want to take on more property than we have to.
As long as you don't build on it.
I'm just saying, it's wet, there's streams, it's very heavily encumbered, so I don't know that the town's going to want to take it.
All right, that's all my questions. Thank you all.
Thank you. Come on up, please. Andy?
Hi, Lynn Hahn.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name, spell your last, and your address.
Lynn Hahn, H-A-H-N, 31 Barron Meadow Lane. My question is, can you guarantee none of this water basin is going to overflow down into the stream at all? Because I'm in talks right now with the engineering department about a development that was built, Point O' Woods, that floods us out every time it rains. And what it does is it washes out our dirt lane, which goes down into the stream there. So you take all those homes and all that stuff out is great, but can you guarantee none of that water is going to overflow, because we're dealing with flooding as it is, and the township doesn't take care of our lane. We do. We have to pay to maintain it all. So I'm concerned about the water, because I'm fighting it now.
Yeah, I don't know the circumstance that you're facing at the moment.
Yeah.
This stormwater design meets all the current rules, and it would reduce flow from this area towards the Bannon Meadow Brook. So we would be sending less water towards, I'm not sure where you were located, but towards...
I'm on Barron Meadow Lane itself,
Okay.
next to the swim club.
Right.
It's a dirt lane. And I'm sure engineering passed the same development, the same engineering, the whole 9 yards, but the residents go and punch out holes, and it's flooding our properties out, which is illegal. I'm already talking to DEP with the state about it, and they're going to step in if it's not resolved. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't have to battle this again. You know what I'm saying? So...
I hear what you're saying, and it not only is part of our design, but obviously it's important that what we build functions properly.
Yeah, because as it is now, it just floods out. It comes across Four Plains Road, that stream area. So it's totally wet. We sit on wetlands as it is. Our water table is high. You can't go down 3 feet without touching water where we are. So water is a big issue in that whole area. Even Toscana was an old, blueberry farm that was always flooded out, so we just sit on water. So we're just a little concerned about, all right?
Yes,
That's
understood.
it. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Anyone else from the public would like to ask a question of the engineer? Come on up. Andy?
Hello. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last, and provide your...
You could raise that mic to you.
My name is Zachary Bologna, Bologna. I live at 35 West Main Street in Farmingdale.
Where do you live?
It's in Farmingdale, 35 West Main Street. So
You have to talk into the mic,
35
so you're,
West.
and you're talking to the board.
Main Street in Farmington, okay.
I'm just curious, if the proposed construction area, is that elevated, the area in yellow compared to the area in green? How does that relate height-wise? Because if you're planning on building in the yellow area and putting hard surfaces down, will that funnel more water into the green area when it rains or if there's a hurricane, God forbid?
You're looking for what is the topographical conditions in the yellow area and compare it to the green area?
Yep.
Correct.
So I believe I spoke to this to some extent. The general direction of grading as it sits now is that most of that yellow area drains towards the north, towards the green area, and eventually to the Bannon Meadow Brook. There's some small portion of the site now which does drain to Route 9. We are collecting essentially entirety of the site. We're using basins, both above ground and underground, to control stormwater. It will flow towards the Bannon Meadow Brook, but it will meet all regulations on control of runoff, recharge of water into the ground where we can. We talked about the soils, and will discharge at a lower rate than present.
Okay?
Okay, that's all.
All right, thank you, sir.
Can I just add a follow-up question
ahead.
to that for Mr. Zungner? So, the applicant is proposing to raise the site with the site development, correct?
There's a fairly significant grading, but I wouldn't, the end that would be furthest to the left does come up from its current grade. Some portions actually in the middle come down a little bit. And so I don't know that saying we're raising it is the best overall description, but certainly some portions are being raised.
You haven't done like a cut fill analysis or anything like that at this stage, right?
We have not. I looked at it because no, we have not done cut fill analysis.
So the site is, as you head north, is being elevated. They are proposing underground infrastructure for stormwater management purposes on the west side of the building, so the bottom part of the screen, adjacent to the passenger vehicle parking spaces for the flex space. So I just want to give that clarity. But Mr. Zugner, everything as far as impervious coverage on the site is collected into some type of stormwater management system and a basin before it then is ultimately discharged, right? Nothing freely flows off the impervious area into that green space. It's collected, attenuated, and then discharged to the water courses, correct?
That is correct, yes.
I think that's just, I want to make that clear for the board.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else from public would like to ask a question of the engineer? Okay, not seeing any?
Motion to close.
We have a motion to close. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Eileen?
At this time, the public portion of this part of the hearing is now closed.
Okay, are we go with Mr. Zugner? Do we have any more questions for Mr. Zugner? Nope. Eileen, we're going to take 10.
Okay, the board will now take a 10-minute recess. They'll be back at 9:10.
Thank you. Eileen, we're ready to go.
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Mr. Pate.
Mr. Chair, board members, we're going to ask if this board will continue the application to the evening of September 9th. And we'll begin our presentation on September 9th, with your permission, with a detailed operations presentation on both the flex building and the self-storage building. Before, I have a couple of other points I'd like to make, but is the 9th of September acceptable to the board for that purpose?
Yes.
Okay. What I would anticipate is, there's a couple of other things on your agenda that will get a good portion of time. I have 4 more witnesses. Operations testimony, which I have a sense is going to be detailed and time-consuming, followed by Mr. Federici's testimony with regard to traffic and circulation. He's heard the questions that came from the board, and we'll make sure he's prepared. Followed by the architect's presentation of the buildings, and then the last witness is Christine Cafone. I do not have Christine Cafone on the 9th. The most that we would accomplish on that night is the other 3 fact witnesses, and then we would look for a date a little bit later in the fall. Would that work, Mr. Chair?
That works, Mr. Pape. What's most important is we understand what's going in, why it's going in, and what it's going to be used for.
There were a couple of questions that came from the board and board's professionals. I want to make the commitment to have the responses to those when we return. Charlie asked that we have and Jennifer asked that we have the sewer capacity of the line going through our property identified. We know who the users are, and we'll find out what the total capacity.
And who can tie into it, et cetera?
Yep.
Right, Ms. Gillender mentioned? Yep.
Number of vehicles that could be potentially stored on the property, types of vehicles, and where they would be stored, what overnight parking is being proposed, a description of what type of an EV charging station will we have. The buffer behind lots 10 and 11, we need the information from Mr. Hutchinson's office identifying whether it's listed as a commercial or residential use. There was, the chair pointed out an interest in identifying the safe traffic flow and circulation on site. Mr. Barillo asked if we could separate the 2 sites. We're going to actually had a little conversation on that in the back, which we'll go over. Charlie asked that we meet with the water company, meet with New Jersey American Water, and ask if they would give us a commitment for firefighting capacity for the buildings. Those were the questions I recorded as we progressed, so commitment is to have those responses when we return. With your permission, we'll ask that it be carried to the 9th without the requirement of renotice or republic.
There was a request for a fence plan as well.
With a fence plan. Thank you.
Also, Mr. Pate, was there a woodlands management? Because I don't know if we saw one yet.
That would be probably at site plan.
A site plan, okay.
You know, you know that we do these things. We met with the fire chief twice. We went to the environmental commission twice. We met with Shari, actually on the site. I walked this property with her. Oh boy, last summer, we walked this entire site, and then we've also been working with her on it. We'll be certain that we continue working with your.
And then, Mr. Pate, you know, the public, the engineer, the first gentleman that came up before us, asked about maybe shifting the property a little bit. If you have to go a little smaller to make that happen, to alleviate some of the issues that may be for the residents across the way, that's something that should be looked at.
Mr. Chair, I thank you for sharing that comment with us. I can tell you that smaller is the painful word to my client, but I appreciate your candor. I certainly do.
Anything else? No? Okay.
Carried.
So, anyone that's here for BA 20-118 Fort Plains Partners LLC, this application is being carried to September 9th with an expiration date of October 12th, 2024, with no further notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night
Good
now.
night, Mr. Pate.
Thank you.
Okay. When's the next meeting?
September 9th.
Okay. Well covered. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Eileen, we're adjourned.